Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in Pioneer. Today we're looking at 4-Color Fires. 4-Color Fires is a mid-range value deck that, while not dependent on it, significantly benefits from the card Fires of Invention. There are multiple versions of the deck, so I'll first cover the overall game plan before getting to the differences. Fires of Invention is a red 4-mana enchantment that lets you cast spells with a mana value equal to or less than your land count for free, but at the cost of being restricted to only 2 spells a turn and not being able to cast spells during your opponent's turn. Therefore, the incentive is to find ways around its restriction, either with cards that have activated abilities or by temporarily blinking out fires. Various cards have abilities that can act as mana sinks, such as Kenrith, Shark Typhoon, Channel and Cycling Lands, Scrying with Omens, and so on. Yorion is particularly good with fires since its 3-mana companion ability is a non-spell mana sink and it can temporarily blink out fires. A typical play pattern can be casting a spell, then casting Yorion, blinking out fires, and unlocking your mana for a turn to cast more spells. Otherwise, Fires decks look like typical mid-range value decks containing a mix of various removal spells, threats, and value cards. The big difference presently comes down to running either Enigmatic Incarnation or Transmogrify. We'll start with Enigmatic first. 4-Color Enigmatic Fires adds Enigmatic Incarnation to the deck's game plan, which is a 4-mana blue and green enchantment that lets you sacrifice another enchantment at your end step to tutor a creature with exactly 1 mana value more than the sacrificed enchantment to the battlefield. Therefore, the deck runs a number of cheap, usually 1 to 2 mana enchantments that have immediate effects as fodder to find various 1-of-Silver Bullet creatures. Typical enchantments are Omens, Chain to the Rocks, Nylea's Presence, and Spirited Companion. You can also sacrifice extra copies of Enigmatic itself, or Fires. This enables you to get out of Fires restrictions in the late game when you have plenty of mana and would rather be without it. The deck can run many 1-of creatures. I won't go through all of them since they're fairly self-evident what they're for, but to name a majority: Reef, Omnath, and Kenrith for value, Yasharn to stop Rakdos Sack among other decks, Eidolon of Rhetoric for Lotus Field and Phoenix, Moonblessed Cleric as an enchantment tutor, Tolsimir for aggro, Skyclave, Deputy, and Knight for removal, and even a main deck Yorion. The other version of the deck, which I'll call 4-Color TransmogriFires, instead runs Transmogrify as a way to cheat tokens into a big threat, typically Agent of Treachery, which steals either the opponent's best threat or a land. Various non-creature cards in the deck make creature tokens, including Birth of Meletis, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Essica's Chariot, the Wandering Emperor, Shark Typhoon, and even channeling Sokenzan. This version plays more like a control deck with fewer spot removal spells and more control-type cards like Sweepers and Narset. The mana base also differs, with Enigmatic Fires centered around Bant and splashing red for Fires, whereas Transmogrifires is primarily Jeskai and only adds green for Chariot and a few sideboard cards. Both decks sideboard heavily into interactive spells since their main game plan is a slow, grindy mid-range deck, which may not work well against fast linear decks. Additionally, 4-Color Fires can be inconsistent since it's an 80-card Yorion deck composed of cards with disparate effects. Typical sideboard cards are different counterspells like Mystical Dispute, Dovin's Veto, and Aether Gust, Rest in Peace for graveyard decks, and maybe a few more pieces of removal, stacks, or additional threats. Tips and tricks. If you blink out Fires with Yorion and want to sack it to Enigmatic Incarnation at the end step, stack the triggers so that Yorion's resolves and returns Fires before Enigmatic's trigger resolves. If you're worried about casting an enchantment and the opponent removing Enigmatic Incarnation before you can sack it, you can go to the end step and trigger Enigmatic, then flash in an instant speed enchantment like Omen of the Sea. You can flicker Omnath, Risen Reef, and other elementals with Yorion. When they re-enter on your end step, Reef will trigger for every elemental that enters, and Omnath will trigger off any new lands that enter as a result, letting you potentially trigger Omnath's landfall modes multiple times in the same turn. Since Voja, the token that Tolsimir creates, is legendary, you can have it fight something and die, then flicker Tolsimir with Yorion, recreating the token. You can also kill creatures with greater than 3 toughness by having each token fight it. You can flicker Glasspull Mimic to change what it's copying. If you flicker Moonblessed Cleric and anything that draws a card, you can tutor the enchantment to the top first and then draw it, or draw first and have the enchantment sitting on top to protect it from hand disruption. Similar to how you can flicker Fires to unlock its restrictions, you can also flicker Eidolon of Rhetoric to do the same. Deputy of Detention and other removal spells like Chain to the Rocks or Portable Hole can eliminate the Illusion and Golem tokens left behind by Skyclave Apparition and Cavalier of Dawn. In combination with Yorion, this leads to shenanigans, and you can switch which permanents are being exiled by them. If you have Chain to the Rocks but no Mountain, Nylea's Presence will enable it. Yorion isn't the only card that can rebuy your cards for value or clear the way for Fires. Otawara and Aether Gust can bounce your own permanents for value, including Risen Reef and Fires. Kenrith's reanimation ability can be activated as long as you have a land capable of producing black mana, such as Mana Confluence. This can be used for value, though remember it reanimates the creature under its owner's control. I hope you've enjoyed this look at 4-color fires. I want to thank my fellow players in the Magic community for whom sharing their experiences helps make these guides possible. You can find additional resources, such as an up-to-date deck list, in the description. If you think I left out anything important or got something wrong, please leave your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned to see what deck we look at next time.